Betty Friedan, The Life of a Feminist. By Jordan Weisberg, Sophia Gozzi, and Orly Diaz. Betty Friedan was born on February 4th, 1921 in Peoria, Illinois. Her maiden name was Betty Goldstein, her mother was Miriam Goldstein, and her father was Harry Goldstein. In 1938, Friedan started attending Smith College and eventually went to the University of California. In 1941, Friedan had her first son, Daniel Friedan. Not long after that, she had Jonathan and Emily Friedan. After college, Betty became a feminist, activist, journalist, and a women's rights supporter. The reason that Friedan became a feminist was because her mother was an unhappy housewife with no power of her own. She also knew that a man would taunt a woman over the thought of becoming successful. A woman that could outsmart a man was considered a fantasy, and meant that there was no such thing as a useful or even a smart woman. After considering her options, Friedan decided to write her first book. In 1963, she published The Feminine Mystique. The book became a bestseller with millions of copies sold. Book reporter Ariana Huffington quotes, "If you've never read it now." Another quotes by Emily Bazillion, "It is a life-altering bombshell of a book," and more. Betty informed her readers that she wrote The Feminine Mystique because the woman felt a sense of depression while being practically forced to be subservient to men financially, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The Feminine Mystique was widely credited with the women movement in 1960, as well as it had an impact due to its focus of transforming women's personal consciousness. Being that the Feminine Mystique was such a huge help to women, Betty wrote 5 more books over the course of her life, all of which had a major impact on equality. Her books mostly represented the problem that had no name, sexism. Just 3 years later, Friedan invited 15 women to her hotel room to begin her plan for an organization supporting women's rights. Friedan wrote 3 letters on a napkin. N-O-W. Any person who decided to accept was now part of the National Organization for Women. Friedan believed that women and men should all be given the same rights, as well as not to be judged for their gender. Also, that abortion should be the woman's choice. Equal pay for equal work is one of the most major goals for now. If a man works the exact same job as a woman, the pay should be the same without any judgment over gender. Now became an organization to give women a voice, to speak what women wanted to but couldn't say. Women failed to understand what they deserved. Women don't need to change themselves for anyone, especially not a man. Women define themselves. Nobody can define a woman for them. Women oftentimes believed that their lives were programmed and unmeaningful. Most women were tired of working for men, doing whatever a man wanted, and not being allowed to be in political power. Now inspired women of all races, religions, and more to work for a profession. During the 1970s, Friedan led effort with NOW and others to get the Equal Rights Amendment. Friedan started the movement of women fighting for their rights. Without her, women may not have had the inspiration to try for a long time. The We Can Do It poster represents Betty Friedan because she encouraged women to speak up. Friedan wanted women to be recognized as strong and independent, as the visual of the poster shows. Considering Friedan's leadership, she was known as the mother of feminism. Friedan wanted to publicize that men believed there is no such thing as a useful or smart woman. However, she made it clear that that was not the case. In 1971, Friedan conducted the National Women's Political Caucus. This was a chance for women to be part of creating policies and not being a worthless assistant. Women needed to speak up and stand up for their rights and equality. Friedan said that she worked and fought alongside vigorous, happy, well-adjusted women. Betty Friedan did so much for women. However, she passed away on February 4th, 2006 at the age of 85. Even though we haven't reached complete equality, we are so much farther than we were 25 years ago thanks to her. With the help of Betty Friedan, her organization, and her grand leadership, women had finally been given the equality they deserved.